Abobaku, born to die with the king. Episode 2. It had been some days since the Alaphin's body was lowered into the earth, his crown and staff laid beside him, and the living Abobaku buried halfway under sand to keep the covenant of the ancestors. But then, a whisper rose like harmattan dust and spread through the land. The Abobaku chosen for the king's burial was the only son of a widow. Not just any widow, but that widow, the one whose tongue was feared more than the poison of the acute snake. For it was said that if she spoke a curse, the earth itself would dry, the rivers would sour, and children would be born with empty hands, no destiny to hold. In the days of ancient Oyo, a curse from such a woman was not a thing to gamble with. Enit ori riwalori iji ikeo, keo nibi esse, he whose head is balanced on the learning tree must not run without thought. The elders knew the land was balanced on the widow's mercy. So, with no other road to take, the people bent themselves before her compound. Drums fell silent, and elders spoke with slow tongues, offering her appeasement. According to the customs, the only way to soothe the bereaved mother of such spiritual power was to give her life where life had been taken. 7 virgins were chosen from the village, not to be wedded to any one man, but to belong to the widow alone. They would be her wives in name, but their wombs were to be seeded by any man of her choosing, their children born not to their fathers but to the widow's name, to replace the son she had lost. It was an ancient bargain, the widow's bloodline restored, the village spared. After the rites were done, palm oil poured, and kola nuts broken, the wind of tension that had wrapped the village began to loosen. Drums returned to the air. The elders gathered once more to speak of the throne, for the land cannot be without its king. But this time, the talk did not fall into the same old path. One grey-bearded elder rose and said, "Why must we wait until the king dies to look for the Abobaku, and in doing so risk spilling the wrong blood? Is it not wiser to bind the fate of the Abobaku to the king from the very day of his crown? Let both be born on the same day, and when one breath stops, so too will the other." The council murmured, and the villagers nodded. It was agreed, from that day, every king would have his Abobaku chosen at his coronation, his shadow in life and his companion in death. When the time came to crown the new Alaphin, the talking drums beat into the air. Before the crown could be laid upon his head, the elders announced, "Let any man who wishes to walk the path of the Abobaku step forward. Let him share the king's life, knowing he will share the king's grave." At first, the air was still. No man moved. Then, slowly, a figure stepped from the crowd, a man of about 39 reigns. He had no wife, no child, and no family to call his own. Among his mates, he was hardly counted, for he had no wealth and no land. But that day, his voice was steady. "I will be the Abobaku." And so, a new tradition took root. The choosing of the Abobaku was no longer secret or forced, it became a voluntary act, and the rewards were enough to make many eyes hungry. For in Oyo, the Abobaku lived as a king without a crown. Once a man pledged himself to be the king's death companion, he was above the law. No whip could touch his back, no chains could bind his wrists, no judgment could fall on him, no matter his offense. He was guarded day and night, his steps shadowed by armed men. Maidens were given to him for his comfort, servants to wash his feet, and food served in golden calabashes, for the Abobaku was but a living sacrifice, a ram fattened in the pen until the day the knife would fall. Tuj Khan, O Bodu Sanradada, the animal meant for sacrifice must be well fed. Yet, the elders also knew the second truth, Kosi onoti en losi ikuti keo ni siesi, there is no road to death that does not carry the sound of footsteps. The new Alaphin sat in his glory, the Abobaku by his side, their lives tied by invisible rope. The people rejoiced. The drum spoke. The air seemed safe again. But it did not end there. The worst happened. To be continued.